Zain really gave us quite a lot of information. And maybe it's now our job to boil it down to some practical ideas and facts of what we are seeing in the industry, driving the mobile broadband, driving the change of social media, etc. Maybe I can just mention a few things that has happened since a year ago. Practically, we have had the growth of the mobile broadband subscribers in the world 60%. There are now more than 1 billion mobile broadband subscribers. There are more internet subscribers on the mobile than there is on the fixed. It's actually a fact. Something we've been predicted, but now it's actually a fact. And 30% of all the phones sold last year were smartphones. And when we say smartphones, we actually mean either Apple or Android. Nothing else. Maybe Nokia will become a smartphone. It's a small player right now, and it's kind of ridiculous and strange for me to sit here from my neighboring country, Finland, where Nokia was such a dominant player, to see how quick shifts can be in this industry. Hassan also talked about the profit pool. The over-the-top players in social media have stolen mainly from the operators the profit pool nowadays and are dominating totally. We as vendors have seen very little of the profit pool for quite a while. The fact though is that there's just about 10% of the total mobile phone installed base or base smartphones. And we have seen in smartphone-heavy cities what the difference it makes, both from the ecosystem of the whole industry, but also on the infrastructure and the networks that we were talking about before. That has happened in New York, it's happened in San Francisco, it's happened in Hong Kong, in Tokyo, and a few other cities on the globe. But there is a tremendous impact when you start to have smartphone penetration above 40–50%. It completely changes the game. And we talked about that actually last year as well, about how voice is becoming social media. Now the trend is that voice is becoming almost zero revenue. And what are we going to do then? Before we go into the decent ecosystems, looking into maybe trying to penetrate new enterprise segments, I think that what we've seen in these highly competitive markets, that operators have found a way to correlate the value of a byte with the growth. So they have a linear growth of price or revenue, as well as they have a linear growth of data. Which means that if a consumer increases his data with, let's say, 100 megabit, you actually have some correlation, maybe 25% increase in revenue or something. If you can find that mathematical formula, then you've done something right. And you are probably on the way to actually monetize on the mobile broadband. And going forward then, we actually think that in a few years we'll have 5 billion mobile broadband users in the world, 5 billion. And not far away, 2016, we think that that's going to happen. We also believe that the data will grow some 10 times from now to 2016. So all overall, you know, there's a lot of pressure, a lot of economical difficulties, prices are going down. At the same time, if we can embrace this mobile broadband, I believe that there's a great opportunity for you guys and us in the industry. So with that, why don't I just invite you one-on-one, and then we would like to invite the public to start, the audience to start to think of some questions, because we will have a session which is about 1 hour and 15 minutes or something like that. So it would be great if we could interact a little together and try to stimulate some concrete actions on how we actually can achieve something until the next Arab advisor session in the year. June 2030. Fantastic. So Nayla, I'm going to start with you.
Ladies first, thank you. So I think, as it was said this morning, as well by Hassan and by yourself, I think 2011, 2012, where 2 years was very disruptive. I think I put it under the umbrella of disruption. If you take the Jordanian market, you will be so high disruption, but let's go ahead and think about regionally what's happening. From one side you have the smartphone effect. In Jordan we were some percent having a smartphone 3 years ago. Now it's very common. It's significantly present in the market. From the other side, is the occurrence of OTT, I mean the social networking, which changed completely the game for our business. And even we didn't feel it as much as in Europe and US, what's happening between the players, between OTT and the telco. I think we have to prepare ourselves to react well in this region because we have some room to display. But let's come back to not only to the players, but to the markets. So I say disruption. Disruption through, let's say, 3 keywords. The first one is about acceleration. When I'm a person who comes from the fixed line. We spent 50 years with fixed line before seeing the occurrence of mobile. For mobile, it took 20 years. So after that, we have internet period of time, 10 years. And suddenly, we have in 3 years a spread and dominance of the e-learning cycle, which is through the social network. So this acceleration is mean for telco to be very agile. And I don't think it's the feature of telco to be very agile because we are investing for the long term. So all our system or our approach or the way we are producing and dealing with the market is not very compliant to the agility, but this is something we have to deal with. Second point of disruption today is about the players. I mentioned it. We have to deal with the smartphone producers, which is something we know, and we have to deal especially with OTT, which is another game. And I'm not sure we are very ready. Okay, today. So we have to take our value from this new market. And today, I cannot say that the telco are providing something else.
And you work in a global
and we are working on a global. What's happening in Europe is worse than what happens in the Arab region. So I think if we have an initiative to take, it's probably most from the regional operators here than coming from.
But do you think there's something, I mean, from Europe, I agree with you. I think that the operators in Europe have been almost incapable of reacting and almost taking all the protective steps.
It went too fast for them. And after, there is no secret.
What do you mean France Telecom is not agile?
No, I don't know any telco which is
just kidding. You're right.
I don't know any telco which is agile today.
No, it's not.
Which is able to go as fast as market. And so let's take the third point, which is very important today, what I call, I don't know if it exists, but I would call it the e-learning.
What's
the e-learning point.
Yeah.
Okay. So we say there is no room for voice, etc. The main question is, we have social networking boom here in the region and everywhere in the world. It's a big thing. What is the next one? 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we all said here and there that the content will be the future. But what we thought about the content is really different of what you are seeing today. So what will be the next big thing? It will be E, but we don't know exactly what. And we have to prepare ourselves for that. So as telco, we will prepare through data, investment, and so on, but it's not enough. It's not the network question. About the usage, how we can deal with people. And I think that Hassan has said something very important, how we will be able, and especially in Jordan, because we have many startups, many initiatives coming from the IT sector, okay, how we will be able to, not welcome, but I think to help the startups, the new innovators, the new entrepreneurship, to make that idea possible. And this is really a question mark, and probably it's something you have to work with.
Very good. Very wise one. Thank you so much. Yeah. From one global player now to used to be a global player, today is a regional player. I'm going to pick the 3 operators in Jordan first, just to give them a chance to date between each other since you're competing here. So, Ahmad, Zain today is, I would say, a typical one of the regional players, coming back strongly and through a period of divestment, and now coming back again with a little more of a stronger Zain player again, I think. What's your reflection over the last 12 months, I would say, and what have you seen in Jordan in particular, but also, of course, some global reflection?
Actually, Andres, I'll try not to repeat what has been said. I'll try to come up with something new. So, to say the least, in Jordan, and I talk about my experience I saw in Jordan, is that there is, and it's obvious, there is a very slow, if not a decline, in the voice growth. And there is a growth in the data subscription. Now, the growth in the data, or leaving the golden era of the voice came before the data growth is matured enough in Jordan. We have a high penetration rate on the data users in Jordan, driven by social media, or driven by...
Is it social media or is it video?
I would say it's, if you consider YouTube social media, it's a social media. The main drive...
Do you get paid for the YouTube transmission?
Exactly. But the main drive for the data penetration is one main factor for the growth in data subscribers or data usage is the social media. What else? In fact, there is a knowledge base on the internet. There is some people who are using it for their corporate subscription and so on and so forth. But what will increase the penetration rate in the data subscribers? There has to be strategic alliances and strategic partnerships between the telecom operators and the other sectors in the country, which means telecom and education need to start up a partnership where where education is highly dependent on data usage. Today we still depend on textbooks in Jordan, and we don't depend on the internet as far as education is concerned. We need to tie up with the health sector, and I know that there are several initiatives in Jordan related to the mobile health services. We need to tie up with the government to accelerate the e-government projects where people can, people will have a reason to buy it, to subscribe to it. Now they have a reason to use it, not to subscribe to it. So that's why you have a high penetration rate on users, and it's much lower on subscribers. Now, the thing is, the infrastructure still needs development. And I believe we're leaving the golden era of the voice at a time where we still need to invest heavily on the Jordan data infrastructure. And today we depend highly on a copper network that is owned and operated by one operator. They're not allowing us to use it.
As a hint, that is
So, and we see a delay on the fiber project from the government. So even though we offered that, then we said we're ready to do anything, but complete this fiber project. We want it. We need it. As long as the one and only copper operator is not allowing us to use that wire, let us complete that fiber network. And we need to do that. You need the infrastructure for that.
Yeah. There's not enough just to have the spectrum and the mobile broadband.
Spectrum is another issue. Spectrum is for the wireless data infrastructure, which is, I think, spectrum is also a challenge for operators, and I believe the TRC is doing something related to the spectrum. I'm sure that we'll see something. In spectrum is an issue that can be sorted out.
No, I mean, if it's true that we will increase the data 10 times in a few years, and we will be 5 billion mobile broadband users, you can imagine what that means on spectrum. I mean, it is going to be addressed. We have to address that seriously. how we can get hold of the right spectrum. If it is, as you say, so important for raising the whole education of the countries.
If we are going to depend on the wireless data, the spectrum is an important challenge for us. As I said, fiber is something that we're waiting for in Jordan to improve data infrastructure in Jordan. Telecom operators in Jordan need to maintain their investment level in the infrastructure. Jordan, luckily we have one of the best infrastructures maybe in the region, but still it needs development for the future. If we're talking about a community that is highly dependent on the internet, then you have to have a trustworthy, reliable infrastructure that people can depend on. And this is something that we need to get together, all of us, and do it. On the other side, I believe we need to partner with the application and content providers. And I have said this so many times today. There is a very small percentage of the applications on the app stores that are in Arabic. And our people do need, if we're talking about the mass applications.
But a year ago we
need
discussed
Arabic
actually,
applications.
and today at least we have both iPhone and Android in Arabic. So I mean the platform should be
the platform supports Arabic, but
yes.
we don't see so much of Arabic applications actually.
That really passes. Why? Yeah, please.
Just a remark, we launched last year mobile apps words, and we asked, it was a prerequisite to have the mobile apps in Arabic.
Yeah.
We had 50% of the candidates who asked us, can we keep it in English?
Really?
Yeah.
No, I mean a year ago you had
we have to push for Arabic.
No, I totally agree. This is a discussion we've had now over those couple of years, that when finally Android and Apple will come with Arabic interfaces, we will actually start to see them coming, the applications. But we haven't, and it's very funny actually. I don't know why.
We do have, there is some applications and content providers who are coming. Content, there is an Arabic content. Of course, when it comes to applications, we do see some applications coming out in Arabic, but we need to accelerate them. Yeah. And this is something that needs a big effort from the telecom operators as well as from the companies who are working on the application development.
Maybe some facilitation also of the availability of capital, I think, some venture capital funds can help small companies. But I'm going to turn into can I call you still a local player? I mean, one of the guys who actually will be absorbed, I suppose, according to us.
You can call us what you like, a local player, a regional player as well. Thanks, Andres. Let me start by thanking Jawad for this real landmark event. And just to note, I think you should have kept a sense notes at the end of the closing, because he summed up the whole thing that I wanted to say. So thanks, Hassan, for it. But anyway, as we said, that nothing new. In this room, if you look across this room, we have all the experts in this room. We have the vendor side, we have the application content providers, we have some handsets providers, the operators, the regulator, the government. I think such event will start the convergence. And I think the convergence started, and we start to see it when you have a moderator as a vendor. And this is just the start of how the whole game is changing among ourselves. And we always said, I think we said it last year and the year before, that the game is not as before. The operators' appetite is different than before. We thought, as operators in the past 5 years, that we are the king of the road, comparing to the content, to the applications, to what have you. We control what we want. And it's a totally different ball game. And this is nothing new. We feel it, and even our attitude to that position started to change, even inside our orbits. So I just want to quickly just focus on 4 major mega trends that are affecting the globe. Maybe in a nutshell that my colleagues have mentioned, but we are witnessing decreasing in ARPU, and if you look at the global ARPU, it's dropping by a good 30%, and the MENA ARPU will drop in the coming 5 years from $20 to $18 in the coming 45 years. So our work is dropping, revenue is stagnating, and we have seen, and actually one of the, if you look at the MENA part, not to look on globally, of course, it's dropping, but the MENA part, like the compounded average growth rate is going on the negative side, instead of 4% to 2% in the MENA countries. Number three, competition is increasing dramatically, having penetration rate going on the high side, challenge on profitability and EBITDA that we are facing as operators. We put a lot of pressure on the competition, and we can see the pace of even the tone between the operators. It's getting on the nerve of the competition. We see it in every country, from Saudi Arabia to maybe to less extent in some countries in the Gulf, but obviously in Jordan, and we see it in Egypt, we see it and we see it more in countries to come. If you look at the number of operators increase comparing to the increase of revenues in the global environment, we've seen that the 70% increase in operators, while the revenue of the total pie it did not grow at the same pace. So this is another thing so ARPU is dropping, revenue is stagnating, and competition is going on the high side. And the fourth important thing, which is the data exploding. If you look at the data, how it's exploding, and we are living it now. When we talked about it 3-4 years back, we said that okay, data will grow X folds in the coming. Now we are living it, and it will grow in the coming 5 years. And as you said, maybe that the numbers you have showed, maybe nobody can get it perfectly right. But what we have on some of the resources that we have, that the data will increase 26 folds in the coming 5 years, while in the MENA area, while the data revenues will increase only twice. The best will be 3 times. So if you look on those trends and all these challenges in the telecom operators, we are looking at the partners, and my colleague put it in a nice way on partners on innovation, infrastructure, to solutions, and even to the sales and marketing, which is something this might take longer to get that. So in a nutshell, this is the global environment. Going back to, since you started with the local operators, Jordan is well known as the most competitive market in the region, if not in the world. And we want to keep it this way, I promise you. So this environment, it puts a lot of pressure on the operators, on revenues and the EBITDA. And I think the operator who has efficient operations, and we talked about cost optimization and efficiency. And if you look at Jordan and the MENA, we did not yet start a real cost efficiency and cost optimization waves compared to the European markets, where they have their third wave of optimization on the cost side. They've started at some operational excellence, then they get to how
the only thing I would say on the cost, and I agree with you, I think European operators have cost optimized a lot, and they've been very good. It's also the easy part to attack. What they haven't been so good at is what I think you have addressed much better, is the innovation and trying to protect and correlate the revenues with the growth of data, etc. So I would caution the Arab operators to copy too much European, because I think that you're absolutely right. They have become fairly low on innovation, fairly incapable of reacting to new business models, and too fixed into trying to sort out the problems in the balance sheet instead of sorting out the problems of the growth and innovation. So I would really try to keep the momentum in.
Yes, just to comment on that one. Actually, the MENA operators in the past 5 to 7 years, they were busy just acquiring customers, having a year-on-year growth with double-digit, if not in some cases more than that. So they were busy in revenues on the up, going like this, EBITDA going like this, and profit the same. So why to worry about cost optimization, which is voice driving the 90+%, 95+% of the revenue? So why to worry? Now the game is changing. Now we started to see, and by the way, the update between the 2G to 3G was a bit of a big step. Going from 3G to 4G is just a smooth step where people they are there. The demand is there. I will come to that. I don't want to take the floor, but we'll come to the Arabic content. I think the Arabic content didn't, maybe we have some activities at STC, they started some activities, some operators, they are trying to create content aggregators that are focusing on the Arab content and having the subscriber base at the beginning, to have the reach from the start. We will see some initiatives. If you look at, and talking about the pressure, if you look, for example, what Telefonica did when they acquired 85% of the social network, the Spanish social network in Spain, and even France Telecom when they acquired 49% of the video share operator. So, as we said, that operators, they started to look at the adjacent market and building on, be it on the thing, and then you go, be it on.
That's going to be very interesting to see what happens to these companies.
They are actually, it's not a walk in the park. I'm telling you, we will see acquisitions, we will see some mergers in the coming 5 years, and I think the map in the MENA, I would say, the map in the MENA, don't quote me on this video.
You seem to have fun.
So we will see a different map in the acquisitions in the coming 5 years between the major groups.
I'm going to let a little different perspective. Jay, who is actually from Qualcomm and running the Middle East. You're mainly involved Qualcomm, of course, on IPRs and on chipsets. From your perspective, I mean, you've been hugely successful, of course, on global scale, I would say, also with wideband CDMA and now with Apple and the Android phones, etc. I mean, assume that. I think that we talk about social media, but what actually drove this was the introduction of Apple, you know? And you were very early on working with them as well, and with other of the smartphone operators. But from your perspective, how is the Middle East region performing in that sense?
I mean, let's take a look at it from a technology perspective. The purpose of the network operators is to, if you want to simplify it, is to drive higher subscriber growth and to drive higher ARPU. And if you look back at what each inflection point in the evolution of the wireless industry has provided this kind of value creation was when 2G was first deployed in the mid-90s. It was about connecting people on mass level. So it wasn't, nobody was talking about voice or data or anything like that. It was about the capability to connect people together. That created a huge value. For existing fixed line operators to expand and increase their subscriber growth, and also huge opportunity for greenfield operators. As that started to mature over the following 10 years, what happened is that the output of the platform started going down. 3G as a technology came in and connected people to the internet. So it wasn't just about connecting people together, it's about connecting people to content on the internet itself. So the driver for this kind of output growth was mainly about applications and services. Though content never really picked up. It was about some things around mobile commerce, it was about some very basic applications until social networking came about. And what was mentioned earlier about YouTube content and this driving increased output and adoption by smartphones. So from a technology perspective, we see 3G as the early stage and still has some room to grow from a maturity.
Are you developing your technology looking at the applications and the YouTube on the smartphone? What does that mean?
Right, exactly. So what we do is actually, our philosophy is to look at the ecosystem. So that what makes Qualcomm unique is the fact that we invest in the whole ecosystem. If you look at our investment, they range from services that we work together with the operators to deploy, to chipsets, and right now we're looking at 5 years down the road on wireless charging for electric vehicles. So we look at the environment and how it's changing, and the impact that's going to be on the network operators, and how they're going to make money off it. And then we build the products and the platform basically.
But you're mainly, you're big R&D arm.
Just exactly, just to give you an example, in the US, we optimize Netflix for the best streaming capabilities to stimulate honest usage on smartphones. So basically, what you're going to get is the best user experience. Streaming HD movies on a smartphone.
How do you see the cloud in reality? I mean, So the phones, of course, the more you get applications out in the cloud, the more performant but dumb the smartphone has to be, because it has to process very, very quickly. And our view, what's your view kind of like a few years ahead? What will a smartphone look like in connection to the cloud services?
In your first question, you mentioned what we're going to do specifically in this region. So we're going to take a look at how the whole industry on the global level is going to move, how the smartphone is going to look like moving forward, and what is going to be done in the MENA region to basically go along that kind of evolution. What was mentioned about the applications on Android and the fact that it supports Arabic but we don't find enough applications. There has been a lot of talk over the last few years about still the same lack of application. But what I've seen is a positive movement over the last few years on trying to create that kind of ecosystem. From regional operators in Saudi, in Egypt, in Jordan, to incubators that are now actively investing, as was mentioned by Hanandeh this morning, multi-million-dollar investments on multiple startup companies to incubate these ideas. And we as Qualcomm are setting up part of our facilities to allow these developers to come and access that technology, optimize on our platform, because the majority of the handsets use our platform, and be able to develop on Android, on even Microsoft as it comes along over the next 12 months. So from that perspective, we are focusing on building out a developer community that's going to generate the services and the apps that they want. It's a early stage, so if you come back in 12 months from now, you're not going to see the 1% run and go to 20%. But if we can move the needle just a little bit, show those key markets in Jordan, in Egypt, Saudi, the UAE, you're going to create the momentum. And that chain reaction is going to create the inflection point. So from a 3G perspective, the focus has to be done on creating that development community and that application ecosystem.
Gigabytes flowing through them, and you will have demands on.
You will have gigabytes processing those gigabytes. So from the processing perspective, we have that capability to push and process them.
So we don't need to be worried. You will sort out the technology on the spot.
So that's a given. Actually, technology is a price of entry. It's not a differentiator. Technology is a price of entry to be able to manage this 5 times, 4 times data technology that's coming. To manage the, if you look just at Middle East and Africa, we forecast 400 million additional 3G subscribers to come in the next 5 years. So this is huge. So how is that going to be managed? So the LTE network is going to offload a lot of that data.
Yeah.
And this is going to go in parallel to a maturing 3G technology, where services is the...
But you are also very active in the early adopters of the smartphone, like the US. So that we have a learning curve now for the last 3-4 years on what pressure these data have to give. So it is promising, I think.
Yeah, actually, if you look at it, when we introduced the first technology that supported connection to the internet and supported mobile broadband was in the late 90s when voice was all the technology. So that has evolved significantly, and we continue to look 5 years down the line of how are we going to handle it. Now, content is starting to play a significant role. So social media is a user-generated content. There is the other aspect, which is
not so heavy.
Exactly, it's very heavy. And then you have
not heavy. Facebook is not so heavy. I mean, if you look in comparison to what you have on media applications like YouTube.
But YouTube is becoming, it is a social media. So this is where there is a lot of uploads. If you look at all the companies.
I don't think it's so.
But if you look at it, they show you Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all of them, so they combine under one umbrella of social media.
I would challenge that, because I think actually human connection, how we communicate is one thing. So we could do it with voice, or we could do it with letters or faxes before, and that has evolved into something that we call social media. So now I can actually have my community in Facebook. For me, YouTube is my daughter, she watches movies and clips on YouTube. She doesn't have human interaction.
You can chat.
Yeah, you chat. Okay, anyway.
That's it, the different views. The way we view it is that it's user-generated content. It doesn't matter where it falls under which application.
No.
What we are missing and what's going to generate a significant opportunity for the operators, driven by the organic growth, because the M&A part is coming to a slowdown, significant slowdown. And the focus is on organic growth, is revenue share on the content, paid content. The issue today is that paid content First, it's not available in local languages and local language, which is changing. Second is that it's too expensive. And third is that you actually pay for the connectivity and for the content itself. When you start streaming movies and videos at high quality, you're going to quickly go down through your data plan. So what's going to happen is that we are seeing a move towards subsidizing and getting the traditional advertisers, not the mobile advertisers, traditional advertisers to subsidize the content, subsidize the connectivity, the stimulate that people. And that represents a good opportunity for the operators on the revenue share side. So between the content, the cloud services, the mobile advertising, as you mentioned, the mobile application, going into the verticals like anything from telematics to smart grids. If we're talking about the 5-year plan, this is what the growth of the revenue is going to be. If you're talking in the short term is we continue to focus on building up the regional content and ecosystem and applications to work on Android. We encourage, we invest in those developers to build those mobile apps. And we're starting to see a couple of success stories. In Egypt, in Jordan, we're 2 major ones. In Lebanon, there's one. As you start to build that momentum, more people are getting attention.
Right. One thing that we haven't touched on, we got talked a lot about ecosystems at Ross. Last year, I remember actually not talking to someone from Cuba anyway, was on the customer. What does it mean? I think it was you and I on another panel. Now I remember. Yeah. And I really like that. How important is it for operators to really cater for the client's needs in this channel?
I think that is firstly the only important point for us in this whole thing, because it's what customers want that is driving our industry. It's what customers want, which has changed so much, which, as Jay mentioned, is a point of inflection. We're seeing the biggest point of inflection we've ever seen. We have had them before. When we converted from analog to GSM, that was a point of inflection where everybody said we can't afford GSM. We came through that. Then there was selling 3G licenses without any 3G technology available. So we came through that again as well. But right now, I think we've got the most exciting thing. For the last 15 years, a lot of us in this room have been going around saying, one day you can surf the web, you can read your email, you can watch TV, you can watch movies, all on this little device. And guess what? In the last 2 or 3 years, we can. And it is fantastic. But it does mean we have to focus on customers. But let me just tell you a little bit about the impact on us in last year. On the first day of January last year in Nawras and Amman, we carried 1 terabyte of customer data. On the last day of December 2011, we carried 18 terabytes of data. Huge! And that was, it was in all the things that all you ladies and gentlemen have just said, all these fantastic services, so on top of all the rest of it. But I think the fantastic thing is because we've got so many people focusing on customers now, OTT industry, vendors as partners, application providers, as well as telecoms, then you're getting the mix to work, finally. You know, it's only when these devices, somebody mentioned Apple before, but also BlackBerry and also Android and etc. These intuitive to use, very fast processor-based devices. I mean, it's more computing here than the devices we used to use for our whole company when I started work. Unbelievable. But at the end of the day, this has to work with the network. The network has to be balanced all the way back, and that's what's giving us a lot of challenges. I talked informally to Ahmad before. You know, these are things that you know, you have to think of the whole network all the way back to be able to serve customers, the latency throughout all that, measuring it from a customer point of view. So back to your first question, unless we focus on customers, we stand a great risk of losing them.
No, and I remember you telling me that you pass through the customer care centers every once in a while to see what the temperature is.
Tune twice a day.
Twice a day, yeah. No, it's fantastic, and of course, we should never forget that in the end they are the one determining how we're going to utilize our networks. Turning to another market, which is Turkey. Hakam, you're running the group CEO of Telecom. Avea is part of your operating house in Turkey. I think that Turkey has demonstrated to be an extremely interesting mobile broadband market. The take-up of smartphones and the growth. And interesting enough, I have seen in the P&Ls of operators, they are actually managing to grow a lot of both voice and data. But why do you think the Turkish market is different from any other than that you can't seem to be capturing the consumer value? Right? Do you have any tricks to teach us?
First, I would like to thank Jawad and his friends for planning this wonderful conference again and again. It brings me great pleasure to be here and see my friends. So thank you, Jawad, and thanks for this opportunity. Secondly, I sent you a message of friendship from Turkey and from a Turkish company. As a Palestinian, I've been working there for almost 7 years now. And I think that Turkish-Arab cooperation should transcend and supersede any other cooperation. We should be closer together and learn from each other as Arabs and as Turks. So I invite you to come visit us in Istanbul once or twice. Real quick, I would like to tell you a little bit about Turk Telecom Group, and I'll tell you why I'm telling you about Turk Telecom Group. We grew 10% last year. And our revenues are about $8 billion a year. So this is huge growth. We were the highest growing telco incumbent in the world last year. We are top 10 in telco groups in Europe. Our ISP, TTNet, is one of the top 10 in the world with over 7 million ADSL subscribers. There are 3 Chinese companies in that list, so we don't count, so I hope that we are a little bit higher than number 10. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this just to get some credibility out of these numbers, because I'm afraid I have extremely bad news, and I love bad news. I think bad news revives the world. It discerns between the strong and the weak, between the contenders and the pretenders, and it gives us, I think, an inspiration to live and to work. All my friends talked about the challenges, the disruptions. I think they're much more than that. We are facing survival questions. We're really facing survival questions. When our data grows that much and our revenue is stagnant, you are facing survival questions. We're no longer cool. And when you're not cool on the market, and when half the talk, or 60% of the talk, is about other companies, about other industries, something is wrong the way we are viewing things. Today, telecom companies are subsidizing Apple worth $50 billion a year. We are creating their network of distribution. We are creating their network of infrastructure. What have they done? You know, they have these Apple retail shops. I have 1,000.
They own, I mean, come on, you have to face it. You know, the customers, they love the Apple phones. That's why you can charge $50 billion. We hate it because they steal all the profit. But unless we change something about it, of course, I mean, they're going to continue. It's a crunch question, you're saying.
When to start, I shouldn't be building the infrastructure for them. I should not be subsidizing the phone for them. No one is anti-Apple. I have an Apple phone. My children use Apple phone. It's not a question of the customer loves them or not. It's a question of we have to change our business models. Today, we are building the infrastructure for them. We are subsidizing their handsets. We are going through tremendous price wars amongst ourselves. The regulator is only regulating the telco industry. Let me tell you something. Do you know how many people, how many employees work in YouTube? Make a guess. 650. 650. I have 650 in the bus downstairs. That's how many people they employ. You know, they pay taxes. Well, out of 150 companies where they work, they don't pay taxes. Google generates 240 million liras in Turkey. They're a very small office. They don't pay any taxes. You know how much taxes we pay? I'm the second highest paying taxes in Turkey. The first highest paying taxes in Turkey. Orascom is the first in Egypt. And I'm sure all of my colleagues have that same appeal. And yet, Who does the regulator regulate? Regulates us. And then they come and tell us about net neutrality. And the Americans have this, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom. And it's not, I think, anything about freedom of the internet. It is about an appeal to keep these companies growing because they sustain the American growth, which is great, and we want that to happen. But we have to look at our self-interest. We cannot continue to grow as we did in 3G in LTE. I appreciate the appeal made for more capex from my Ericsson friend in the beginning, but I think we need to look at these things in a little bit more, in a smarter way. Today, let me give you an example. If we continue to do this and not charge for the heavier traffic, we are going to lose all the value. All the value. I think in 5 to 6 years, we are going to lose 50 to 60% of the value. So we are talking about survival. 5 years ago, I was at this conference, and I put some slides talking about how voice is going to tend to zero, how the YouTubes and the Googles and the Facebooks and the MySpace are going to take over our networks. We need to think a little bit smarter. And there is a way out. There are many ways out, and we're trying to do them in Turkey. First of all, we must all unite with the regulator and put one plan for how we're going to invest in LTE. We cannot invest in every country 3 or 4 LTE networks. It is a waste of money, it's a waste of effort, and we're just making other people richer. We must think of a plan how we can have one LTE network in each country and we all utilize it. That is the way that we need to go. We need to convince the regulator, just like in the United States, when you pay a